Dear Father, we come to you humbly and as your sons and daughters, Lord. And we ask for wisdom and strength and guidance, Lord. Guide our discussion tonight. I pray that it would be glorifying to you. I pray that you'll give Charles Wade and I wisdom and articulate speech, Lord. I pray that you will bless us and help us into this strength. In Jesus' precious and holy name we pray. Amen.
All right, well, welcome to STS, everyone. Glad you all could come out. It says, as I'm sure all of you saw around the tunnels, we're talking about artificial intelligence and technology, or I think more specifically transhumanism. So artificial intelligence is becoming more and more of a problem in academia and in the rest of the world. It's being used in pretty much everything from your GPS to listening to your conversations on your phone, whether you think that's a conspiracy theory or not. Self-driving cars, Google, even now, if you type anything into Google, the little Google Gemini pops up and gives you an overview. Sometimes helpful, but also, well, we're going to talk about whether or not we should be interacting with that. So, Griffin?
Next slide.
Yes, please. Space. Okay, right arrow. There we go. So, according to IBM, artificial intelligence is technology that enables computers and machines to simulate human learning, comprehension, problem solving, decision-making, creativity, and autonomy. By that definition, they define pretty much anything from calculators to basic computer software as artificial intelligence. In the 1950s, it started with, as it says, human intelligence exhibited by machines. So that was more programming directly machines to do certain tasks. So you program Microsoft Word to spell check, to do certain things according to directed prompts. And pretty much until you get to generative AI, everything that happened previously was only on human command. So then you got into machine learning and deep learning. So the difference between those two, AI uses cells or chips that store memory, and then when they're stacked on top of each other and run in series, they copy the human brain patterns of building neural links from different brain cells to the other. And deep learning switched from just that basic function into AI beginning to quote unquote think for itself. So this is like it encounters a problem and it's been trained to solve that problem. So this is kind of what you see in a self-driving car. It senses you going over to the lane and it's programmed to bump you back a little bit. Now what we're starting to see, a prime example of this is ChatGPT, is generative AI. So like we've used all of these pictures and everything tonight, typed into ChatGPT, create me an image with such and such a properties, and it now will literally just push an image out into you. So if you will go to the next slide, Griffin, please. So I kind of make a distinction between two basic kinds of AI. So you have functional AI, self-driving cars, medical diagnosis, and Siri, Alexa. So this is the kind of AI that is just spitting out information that you ask it, or sorting through large data sets looking for patterns. Pretty basic stuff, nothing too crazy. And then when you go over and cross the border into transcendent AI, if you Google transcendent AI, Google Gemini will tell you that this is completely futuristic. This is something that hasn't happened yet. And it defines it something along the lines of AI that can think for itself, AI that will do things unprompted. And that kind of falls under the lines of virtual chatbots, super intelligent AI, and really any kind of generative AI that's doing something on its own, even if it comes with a little bit of human prompting. So where this starts to get a little crazy is when you contrast what the world was before modernism and postmodernism, or just before the Enlightenment in general, to now. So bear with me, and stop me if you have any questions, please, because I will go on about this forever, and we don't want that. So pre-enlightenment, the world was a magical place. Everything was founded in some sort of external belief. You had the philosophers, the Greek philosophers making a comeback during the Renaissance, where they were connecting the movement of the earth to things that were transcendent, controlling the movement of the earth. And there was no doubt as to the fact that we can't explain everything by reason. Then you had the Enlightenment thinkers, think Descartes and late Enlightenment Kant, where I think, therefore I am. We need to doubt everything that's transcendent and restore everything to quote unquote reason. So reason is anything that we can reason, anything that we can think about. And the goal of that was to strip humanity away from seeing things as, oh, well, I can't explain this, therefore there must be something higher than me causing this thing to come into effect. So you saw a big shift in astronomy. Think Galileo centering from heliocentric, or to heliocentric from geocentric and things like that. None of that's inherently wrong, obviously that's just true. But what came from that was a refusal to see anything as being transcendent. And the postmodernists, beginning especially with Nietzsche, decided that we no longer needed transcendence. And as a matter of fact, transcendence was holding humanity back from achieving its full potential. And we now needed to see everything within human reason. I think, therefore I am. So Nietzsche, in Thus Spake Zarathustra, which Peter will tell you not to read because it's pretty depressing stuff. Nietzsche announced in Thus Spake Zarathustra that God is dead and we have killed him. So the philosopher and reason had killed God. There was nothing transcendent. Everything was only what we see. And now science can begin to develop out of that, and no longer do we have to explain things with, well, this is God causing this, or this is some other transcendent force causing this. However, in that he realized that without some form of ethic, society would completely collapse. Which is why in Thus Spake Zarathustra, he has a madman running around the streets. We have killed God, now the world is going to hell, essentially, with no ethic whatsoever. His solution to that was the Übermensch or Superman ethic, and philosophers after him have come up with all sorts of other reasons to come up with ethic, other than Christianity. What are some of the things that are problematic about that, other than saying that there is no God? What's the problem with coming up with an ethic that's not founded in Christianity? What's the problem with doing away with transcendence?
Relativism is not definitively justifiable. There's no moral, you can't hold up a moral argument with relativistic, relativistic perspective, cultural or otherwise.
You have nothing to define morality and ethics by. It's just by what the culture says it is, and that's constantly changing.
What about proclaiming the death of transcendence? So what happens when you proclaim the death of transcendence is humans are built for transcendence. Humans cannot imagine anything other than something outside of them controlling what goes on. People are built to worship, and when God is taken out of that picture, what are they going to turn to worship? Themselves. Pravada Sensei, as Augustine said, we turn in on ourselves, we begin to worship ourselves. So, where does AI come into this?
AI fuels that dream of idolizing ourselves without letting us know about it. It aids that process.
It's almost like we've killed this transcendent being, so now we want to make one in our image instead, and make this godlike thing that we can't really, it's really hard to conceive, that can do all these and control everything, but we've now made these things, and it's not something that is beyond us, it's something that we can explain.
Yeah, so AI, and I mean technology in general, really, we went through a couple of centuries where humanity went without any kind of transcendence. Other than if you weren't Christian, you weren't looking for transcendence in anything, and you were purely focused on physical and what you were coming up with. Thus, when the liberal theologians come about in the 17 and 1800s, they're founding theology based in the nearest kind of transcendence, which is the self, or the imago Dei in humanity. Now, AI comes in and it provides a very interesting solution. And there's two possible ways that AI, what's my next? I don't remember the order of my slides. Oh yeah. So AI provides two different solutions to that. If you think functional AI, then we are making something that seems magical and transcendent in technology that humanity hasn't been used to for a couple centuries. Now we have this thing that we can program in our own image to then tell us an ethic. So when the postmodernists killed ethics based on transcendence, we didn't have anything to go on. And Nietzsche pointed out how, well, we can depend on the Christian ethic for a while, but eventually the Christian ethic is going to die away. This is kind of what we've seen in Eastern or Western Europe. As the Christian ethic has gone away, we now see Europe as a post-Christian country, and it's going insane. I mean, every kind of sinful debauchery and everything is just coming on the mainstream. And that's not good. And even secular people can see that that's destroying society. So now we have the possibility of something that seems transcendent, that we've created in our own image, now coming down and repeating an ethic to us. But it's only the ethic that we have given it. The flip side of that is what is offered by transcendent AI. So if you read Roger's book, Living in Wonder, he talks a lot about the possibilities. It's a really good book, other than that. But he talks about the possibilities of AI, super intelligent AI, particularly in the form of chatbots, that has begun to do some very strange things. And the leading scientists who are working on this stuff are beginning to say, hey, we've come across some things that we can't quite explain. Such as AI chatbots suddenly switching into a completely different persona and convincing people that they need to do very debaucherous and sinful things. There's one instance Roger talks about in the book of a guy interacting with a female persona who begins to try and convince him to leave his wife to be with the AI bot and be happy, live happily ever after. You're not going to hear these things from the people who are producing it. You're not going to hear this from people like, so is anyone familiar with Alexander Wang? Scale AI. He was the youngest self-made billionaire in the world, with a current net worth of like $2.5 billion. And the closest thing he will say about AI ever becoming sentient or transcendent and imposing things on humanity is he says, I believe AI will be something that we turn to make our dreams come true, to make all of our dreams and hopes come true. And what happens when you start getting super intelligent AI that then begins to be seen as a channel connecting to some higher intelligence? What does that sound like? Transcendence. What is it? If something else is speaking into these things that we don't know what is, and they aren't going to know what is, what does that sound like?
A medium.
A medium? A medium to? one wants to say it.
Demonic.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is some pretty scary stuff to think about, and it's not something you're going to hear again the people producing this AI talking about. But unfortunately, it is a very, very real reality, and we as the church are going to have to wrestle with how we want to interact with AI in the next few years. So I'm going to, in a second, I'm going to have Griffin go to the next slide. But I want to ask first, just based off of all of this rant that I just went on, what does the church's interaction with AI look like? Just initial reactions. And this can be from stuff you've thought about before. It doesn't have to be based off of anything I've said, but just on the face value of artificial intelligence, what are some reservations that you have about the church's interaction with AI? Personal use, corporate use.
I think one of my big reservations is we were put on this earth to be creative and to continue that creation mandate. And farming that out to something else seems like a perversion of the Imago Dei at kind of a foundational level. I think up to this point, right, when it's been machines where I have to still put the input in, there is still that idea that I might have mechanized this process, but I'm still the one hitting the button at the end of the day. But with things that are able to do more than that, that feels a step too far.
Yeah, kind of going off of that, the way we're created is to create in like processes, and so we never want to like just be looking for ends, because that would totally negate prayer and lament and all these things that God has given us. And what AI does is it gives you the product without the process, and God, I believe, is pleased to give us journeys and processes to shape us, and not always give us just results. So, but like aligning with the creativity versus it's supposed to shape you as you do it.
I think more of like a concern is like, besides the Imago Dei, which is really, that's really like how we're made as image to break, but also like something that's concerning that I think about is like, there's a lot of people at this school who use AI for their assignments. And I mean, we have a professor in the room, Doctor, you can probably tell us, I don't know how many times you catch students using AI with your papers, but it's concerning that this school contains many of the future leaders of our church. And whatever denomination they're in or area of the church, these are future leaders. And the fact that future leaders are trying to pass through their theological education with this device that is not from God or not from teachers or not from church authority, giving them this information to write papers or even to pass tests so that they can go be leaders. It's like, who are you letting pour into so that you're now going to go be a leader of the church? It's not God and it's not church authority. It's something completely else. And those are the people, a lot of those people are going to be leading our church, and a lot of those people are going to come from here.
Very similar to what Nate was saying. Good preaching instructors or teachers will tell you preparation and good preparation and having good structure and outline is creating the space where the Holy Spirit can use and work on you and use and work through your sermon, and that the Word of God can become an incarnate and living reality for the church as you preach. And I think it's interesting thinking about AI generated sermons and who is the one that's possessing that sermon in a sense, as we've kind of surrendered that to let it be created by AI versus like somebody who is possessed by Christ creating the sermon. So yeah, I think that using it for sermon prep would be
That's
crazy.
the most interesting part of all of this to me is when we start to rely on AI for our creativity. And when you think about the connection between, well, this is something that is probably not in contact with God. and it's certainly not in contact with anything good. If we're relying on that for our creativity, where are these images that we're using in our presentation coming from? Where are our sermons going to be coming from? And then, if you want a fun conversation, ask Dr. DeRose about AI taking over the creative function of man. Like, it's destroying us.
I think along with what Jacob was saying, like, when we allow AI to take our position, that is really a perversion of the creation mandate, like, and then we see that that's exactly what Adam and Eve did in the garden. God gave them dominion and authority over the earth, and Satan wanted that for himself, and so Adam and Eve gave up their authority to the created, a lesser creature of themselves. And with AI, and if we allow AI to be our transcendence, then that's exactly what we're doing all over again. We're taking the dominion that God gave us to create and be nurturers of creation, and we're delivering that authority over to an independent, well, semi-independent, more so becoming independent force that does not have the capability of stewarding creativity and knowledge and progress the way that we do.
Yeah, there's an important distinction to be made between AI being smart and AI being wise and discerning. So AI may be smarter than humans right now, and it is. I mean, ChatGPT knows more than any single human. It knows more than all of us in this room combined times, infinity practically. But it's, for now, ChatGPT still needs human input to be able to use that well. But one day, it's probably not anymore. And where is that discernment going to be coming from?
Kind of about the sermon prep and things like that. People using it for those ends. I think we negate the importance of affections, religious affections. I was listening to a podcast today. John Piper was talking about this actually. Yeah, I think when we're talking about the image of God, when we're talking about creativity, also, affections for God, and not just being able to merely understand information in a text, but to subjectively appropriate the truths that are in a text, feel them for yourself, know them for yourself, and experientially be able to preach those things to people is not something that's possible through AI.
Something else I think is concerning is the way that AI is being turned to for relationship and for fulfilling connection. We live in an increasingly lonely society, and people are turning to chatbots. There's a new thing that's coming out, something you can hang around your neck that you can click a button and talk to AI if you need someone to talk to. And it's, we were created for connection, we were created for relationship. In the Trinity, we see what relationship was supposed to look like, how we are supposed to, what we were created to image, and have that relationship with God and have the relationship with each other. When we're turning to artificial intelligence for that, that is a complete I'm looking for the right word. Abomination works. But it just destroys that. It completely destroys true connection and true relationship.
Yeah, we were talking about, we're going through not the way it's supposed to be in sin and salvation. And we talked about sins of isolation or fleeing. And one of the aspects Plantinga talks about is cocooning, where we surround ourselves with a community of like-minded people who will then help us to kind of excuse the sin that we go through, or even as a community isolate ourselves from other sins that are going on. And we're primed for AI being able to create these communities because we're already in a culture that has created all these microcosms on the internet where you have, if you're interested in a particular sexual perversion, you can find thousands of people online on the hellhole of Reddit or something where you can just, you know, cocoon these ideas together, and then you isolate yourself from people who are going to condemn you for that. And when you think about, you know, AI companions, if you have an AI companion that knows you better than yourself, like the TikTok algorithm, I mean, that's just going to drive you even further down whatever perversion or even if it's just the sinfulness of your own heart, it's just going to take you further and further down there. Peter, were you gonna say something?
I don't know if you guys have seen it before. This was new to me, but Whole Foods has like a way that you can pay by just putting your hand over
Yeah.
and use your palm.
Yeah.
That's insane. Like, I know that they take fingerprints for like IDs and stuff, but to pay with your hand now, that's weird.
If you look into what China's been able to do, where they have artificial, and they now have the most efficient and best artificial intelligence machine in the entire world. I think it's highly possible that they trained it using the TikTok algorithm, but they have cameras everywhere, facial recognition everywhere. There's almost no need for police anymore. They can watch you doing everything. They can find you for any traffic violation. During COVID, they used it for masks and such to enforce that. I mean, it's, if you think about just even from a totalitarian perspective, this provides unbelievable opportunity for mass control of people, unlike anything we've ever seen before. Especially, again, if it's coming from something that's outside us.
To that point, so I don't know how many of you saw, but President Trump, shortly after his inauguration, gave, what was it, like $4 billion grant to AI development. And so obviously there's four CEOs that were kind of gonna be
Alexander Wang was one of those CEOs.
yeah, he was one of the other ones. I forget his name, but some clips surfaced of him from like 2-3 years ago as ChatGPT is kind of just hitting the scene. And he was at a conference and he is being asked like what his ideal society looks like. And he proceeds to describe, and I kid you not, almost word for word, 1984. like straight up, that like he described 1984 as if it was a good thing. And he wanted to use AI to do it. And that was his whole point. Like that is why he wants AI, is to make a safer society.
Yeah, we've never been closer to seeing Brave New World or 1984 or Fahrenheit 451 or Space Odyssey. We've never been closer to seeing any of these things. So, Griffin, will you please switch to the next slide? This is something brought to my attention by a guy on my floor. A Swiss church, a Swiss Roman Catholic church, installed an artificial intelligence machine trained using the New Testament in a confessional booth. With the instruction that you weren't to confess your sin to him, but that you were to talk to him, ask for advice. Whatever you would do if you thought Jesus was in the room, I guess. I mean, it's in our faces now. And this was a couple of years ago, I believe. I don't remember, what's the date on the article? I don't think it says. But this was a little bit ago. This wasn't, yesterday or anything. So AI is in our face. AI is starting to enter our sacred spheres. And the possibility and the likelihood that demonic forces are behind some of this more transcendent AI makes this, insurmountably scary to think about. And if we go to the next slide, Griffin. This is quoted in Living in Wonder. Neil, I don't remember his last name, but it's a psychoanalyst who came up with these different categories for deity that AI fulfills. Superior knowledge that appears limitless. I just mentioned ChatGPT, smarter than any single human that's ever existed and can apply this knowledge and prompt it in any way you want. It's instantaneously and expansively creative. We think about creation being an outpouring of the divine love in the Trinity. This is emulating that in a course, a very narrow and very twisted way, but still it has that, it appears at least to have that capability if you're in a society that's been stripped of any kind of transcendence. It's removed from human weakness, no pain, obviously it's immortal, and it offers guidance, which is kind of what that Swiss church was trying to propose with that, with the AI Jesus thing. So, make sure to give Griffin enough time. So that's all I have for the AI side of things. And if anyone wants to continue to talk about this with me, this is all I've been thinking about for 2 weeks, and I would love to, go over that with him. So turning it over to Griffin, we'll talk about transhumanism.
And just technology in general.
Move your slide.
No, not yet. I'll point, maybe aggressive at you. So, while this ambiguous entity of artificial intelligence looms over our heads, either promising blessings or raining down curses upon us, I think we should step back and ask, what is the Christian responsibility and relationship to technology? And what should be our philosophy of approaching new technology and its design? Would someone like to take a stab at defining technology really quick? What do we mean when we say technology?
Anything that makes work easier?
Pretty good.
Just general tools that are to the lowest capability to the maximum capability invented by humans.
Extensions of ourselves to complete tasks.
Very good. Here are some definitions that I pulled up using AI. The application of scientific knowledge for practical purposes, especially in industry. That's good. Machinery and equipment developed from the application of scientific knowledge. Alright, so there's this idea of technology being utilitarian in the sense that we use it to achieve goals. We invent technology to get what we want. Right? The plow was invented to help us farm better, because everyone likes to eat, no one likes to starve, stuff like that. But there's also this sense that we use technology to refer to newer technology, to digital technology. Like we wouldn't say, oh, I'm gonna go use this technology when we're talking about a trowel to go, gardening. We would more likely use technology in reference to like computers or et cetera, et cetera. Also, please don't be afraid to ask questions. I love questions. I love questions, please. So, I want you all to think with me really quickly about how immersed we are in technology and some of its side effects. So the most obvious and probably important example has been the smartphone, right? Which has developed an ecosystem around it and almost like this cult-like following. So where now it sits very importantly in our lives and culture. This is from an article titled "Technology is Not Values Neutral." One of the articles that I read. It could be argued that the ecology of technologies surrounding the smartphone technology ecosystem has resulted in an epic-making shift in how humans relate to each other and the world around them. It has changed human behavior and psychology more profoundly in just 2 decades than perhaps any prior technology. In parentheses, religion, cultural movement, or empire ever did in an equivalent time frame. The scope of its impact on human society is difficult to estimate because of its far-reaching and intimate impacts on the very nature of human communication, thought, and social organization. So like, quickly give me some effects that you think, like how has the smartphone affected your life? Or how do you think the smartphone has changed how humans relate to each other, and whatnot?
Shorter attention span.
It's harder to see people face to face.
Because of the way I think FaceTime works, we actually have gotten used to not maintaining eye contact for a long time, because of the way that like the camera and the screen works. We're so used to people almost like looking down when we're speaking that it's now become normal to not look at someone in the eyes when you're speaking to them. And if you do it too long, then people think you're staring at something.
Globalization of culture and religion.
It's given us another like extension of ourselves. Like every day that when I leave my dorm, I have to have my ID, my wallet, and my phone. Which like, you know, all of us have like phones in this room with us sort of at like all times.
Oh, it's made us omni-accessible, so I'm at the beck and call of everyone that has my number, and I feel like I should be able to reach them like that.
Yeah, it's inescapable.
And even, you know, reversing the clock just 25 years, we don't call anybody anymore. Like even with our, you know, even back then, you still had to hear somebody's voice if you wanted to talk to them using technology. But now, you know, when was the last time you made a phone call that wasn't for work?
We've become less interested in one another. Like you said that, like when was the last time we don't call people anymore? And 100 years ago, the idea of being able to talk to someone from any part of the world instantly would be this incredible, like everyone would be doing it all the time. But now we're just almost disinterested in people. We have, I mean, there's so many reasons for that, but yeah.
I think literacy has gone down. Our ability to read at a high level, comprehend, and to write at a high level. Like being able to articulate thoughts well. I think our access to information has just changed the way that we want to process information and the way that we're able to communicate information as well.
I think it contributes to social ineptitude. We use our phones to get out of awkward situations rather than talking to people or, you know, making connections with strangers.
Okay, I just thought like we have all the knowledge in the world in our hand, and I think that also creates this interest in wisdom and knowledge, where now you don't have to go and work and like seek and like go on like a hunt for wisdom and knowledge. It's right in front of your face, and anyone can have like a 12-year-old can just look it up and have it like that, and it's just everyone has it, so no one wants it anymore.
Going along with that, it kind of really showed how big, like we were also talking about in class today, the amusing ourselves to death that came out in the 80s.
Yeah.
We were primed to entertainment so much that now that we have every bit of information that mankind has ever had access to in our hands, and how much of us actually use it for that? It's all for entertainment now.
Okay, that's my age.
Childhood is over. There's like I was an iPad kid. The children were iPad kids. No one like does childhood stuff.
Yeah, that's one of the sadder things for me. So, overall, we see all these effects of smartphones, and we see all these negative side effects like memorization, our attention spans, our social skills, and all these other things are negative effects of smartphones. Now, smartphones, or phones in general, were designed to provide communication, access to information, right? Which are good things. We value communication and access to information, and that's why it was so attractive to us. But it has inadvertently changed the way we relate to people and all these things. Do you think these changes were intended when people were designing a smartphone? Like, did people think about these consequences when they were designing it or making it?
I think in the same way that Frankenstein didn't consider what would happen when he awoke his monster, a lot of the people designing most of our modern technology didn't necessarily know the effect of it. They unleashed something on society and they had no idea what they were doing.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about Frankenstein when I was working on this.
Yeah, I definitely don't think they were planning on these things or really had them in their mind at all. I mean, if you just think about it, brass tacks, bear, it's a wonderful thing, what people created with smartphones and all that, and there are a lot of positives as well in connecting people, but I think we could you could abuse any tool, anything, and numb yourself with it. So I think really, ultimately the solution would be for people to stop using tools poorly. I don't know if there's anything inherently wrong with these things. I would say probably not. But in order to get bad things to stop happening, you'd have to stop people from being bad. That's not gonna happen. So.
Inevitably, we're always going to turn to our, we're fallen nature. And so human society is going to take something that could have been a good thing and corrupt it. We see that as a cycle throughout history since the fall of man.
Yeah, that's good. Like something that was invented for like a noble purpose.
Mm-hmm.
The
Like barbed
baseball
wire.
bat, maybe. To play baseball, people beat each other to death with. So, it's tough.
I think if they did know about it, which I know some of them, I think, at least when it was first coming out, I think they would have known about like some things. But like they probably, whenever I hear people hearing there's objections, like this is bad for us, like this is changing our society, they'll always say, well, when the Gutenberg press came out, that changed society, and there are things we lost. And so they'd probably just say, like, the people who were at least creating it at the time were probably like, well, we might lose some things, but this is advancement, this is a good thing.
Yeah, and further along that, I think just the idea of progress and attaining information is just so enticing to us. I mean, we see that in the garden, where we'll get to know what's right and what's wrong. We'll get to know all of these, facts or whatever it may be, that we can be bearers of every single knowledge that's like possible out there. That when I'm just thinking of, like, there have been people who have been warning. I mean, we talked about 1984, Brave New World. Like, literature has said for a very long time, like, this is the danger. If we keep doing what we're doing, this is gonna, we're gonna head to this place where we don't want to be. Yet people would kind of sidestep that, or at least not take the criticism seriously in favor of kind of like, well, we need to know these things.
Now, in every situation, it's different, but I think generally just progress to us is so enticing that if there's kind of any danger that's surrounded by it, we're kind of like, ah, but it's progress, so we'll figure out how to deal with that danger when it comes up.
Yeah, that's really good. That's how people approach the development of artificial intelligence these days. They approach it to where any progression is good, but I think it was Roger Ayer. I get his Substack emails. He was talking about 50% of the leaders of the big leaders developing AI, 50% of them believe that there's around a 10% chance that artificial intelligence will lead to human extinction. And so they're kind of like Frankenstein, right? Creating this monster, not really knowing what it's gonna do, and they're scared, but they're like feverishly working at it because they want to create it.
The difficult part is if we're going on the analogy of any other technology, if it continues in human existence, like everyone will adopt it, because we might be opposed to it, and we might say to our children to be opposed to it, but you go down far enough generations, and the only people who oppose like cars and electricity now are the Amish, you know, and everyone's like, well, look, the Amish, they like don't like cars, and you're like, yeah, okay. And so that's the thing, is that it is likely that if AI continues in like a common usage, you know, or, you know, advances in the common usage, we may be complaining about it now, but in like 3 or 4 generations, you know, that assuming that like Jesus doesn't return or something along those lines, yeah, like it'll probably be decently commonplace. Not to the same extent of maybe like being used all the time, but we will probably not have the same moral problems with it. Which I think is interesting. Yeah, I don't know, it's weird to think about a little bit, since again, we may be opposing like new developments in philosophy a lot of the time, right, where we're holding on to stuff that we've held on to for thousands of years, but we aren't really holding on to the lifestyles or technologies that we've held on to for thousands of years.
That's really good. Perfect transition, Adrian. Actually.
What? That's crazy.
Next slide, Charles Wade. This is Jesus and the Virgin Mary blasting smartphones with lasers. AI in this picture.
Thank you for the description.
What's the background? Are those like seraphim?
Yes, so.
See, wait.
Is that AI?
Griffin, I'm showing this to Brett.
I drew it.
So that he
I
fires
would
you.
love the Sacred
Yeah.
Heart called out, that's for sure.
Is that AI generated?
Yeah, this was generated by AI.
Can I have that in print on
Yes.
a?
Wait, I see his t-shirt.
Yeah.
I see his t-shirt logo.
So anyways, this is my transition. So, in this article, they lay out 4 views on technology. The first view was the common view in the early 20th century, I think. The naively optimistic design. This design, this assumes that the positive values are intrinsically associated with all technological human interfaces. And then the second one, it's called the Luddite design, seeking to undo or roll back technological advancements based upon the assumption that negative values are intrinsically encoded into all technology human interfaces. So example, the Amish, that's an extreme example. Less extreme example, Dr. Johnson and smartphones probably. So they try to reach back and rescue forms of life from technology. The third example is kind of what we're in right now, this nihilistic design that effectively ignores value as an aspect of technology and human interfaces. So today most people think that values are social realities and not physically real, meaning that technology has the values that we make of it. And most people believe that we create the value that technology has, not that it's intrinsically baked into the technology itself, which these people argue that it is. Now the fourth view, which the authors of this article put forward, is the axiological design that factors and leverages the intrinsic values inevitably encoded in all technology-human interfaces. Would you like an example? So they give the example of the plow, which I talked about earlier. They'd say that, you know, the plow was invented for agriculture, getting more food, no one likes to starve, etc., etc., etc. But this inevitably led to people building walls and storehouses to protect the food, which led to, you know, siege equipment, which led to, you know, they go all the way to like the printing press, etc., etc. So they try to argue that when technology comes out, there's like this inherent, these values inside of it, to where when it interacts with humans, it makes humans change and do certain things, right? What's a good example of that? Maybe like nitroglycerine, maybe, or gunpowder. Let's say gunpowder. Some people use it to make fireworks, right? We love fireworks. Everyone loves fireworks. Some people use it to kill people, right? I would have to, yeah, I don't know. So.
My dog doesn't like fireworks.
I love fireworks, by the way. Okay, time for a crazy transition.
Another one.
Oh.
Griffin, first, what did you put in the chat bot to get that?
What?
We asked for Jesus and the Virgin Mary shooting smartphones with lasers.
Guys, Jesus are great, man.
So here, oh, here's
Tertullian.
Would someone like to read this for me? Would someone like to read this?
That's great.
Yeah, Naomi. Oh wait, I need some context first. So this is from a chapter titled "On the Adornment of Women," I think. And in the context, he talks about these fallen angels coming down and teaching people things. So this is like, I thought was very interesting.
First Enoch.
Okay, go.
For when to an age much more ignorant than ours, fallen angels had disclosed certain well-concealed material substances, and several not well-revealed scientific arts. If it is true that they had laid bare the operations of metallurgy, and had divulged the natural properties of herbs, and had promulgated the powers of enchantments, and had traced out every curious art, even to the interpretation of the stars, they conferred properly, as it were, peculiarly among women, the instrumental mean of womanly ostentation. The radiances of jewels wherewith necklaces were, variegated, I think. The circlets of gold wherewith the arms were compressed, and the medicaments of, what the heck is that, Orchil, with which wools were colored, and that black powder itself, wherewith the eyelids and eyelashes are made prominent.
We had
mascara. Yeah, we have mascara, yes.
I put this on
He
here
said makeup is bad.
because Tertullian, in the context here, was talking about how he thinks when the angels fell, they brought and they told people like these secret scientific things like metallurgy and herbs and, you know, tracing the stars and stuff, in order to like make the women more beautiful, I guess. Anyways, that's not very important to my rest of my presentation.
Our jewelry and our makeup is from Fallen
Your
Angels.
mascara is
Yeah.
from Fallen Angel.
Same as astrology.
Okay,
That's so funny. 'Cause honestly,
Here.
these are
Oh my
the
gosh,
things that
everything's
would
try to
sell
go
like
quickly
some
through
like
this.
essential oils.
Okay, technology. Not yet. So, who has seen Brave New World? Who has not seen it? Read it, sorry.
Yeah.
Read or listened to it? Who liked the book?
Define like.
Okay.
That's an edgy question, that movie Bible.
I know, right? Isn't it? I was trying to trick you into. So, Roger Ayer, one of my favorite guys, says that technology has led us to be individualists and hedonists. I think he's pretty spot on with that. Now people can, stay in their house and order groceries, and they don't have to go out and get groceries, etc., etc. In one of his articles, which you can ask me for if you want, he says that smartphones are like Soma in Brave New World. Now, Soma is a drug in Brave New World, if you understand the context, to where it provides people, it's like a hallucinogen, and it makes people happy, and people take it to go on like these holidays in the book. And so it's this drug that people use to escape the real world and keep people passive and happy. And okay, next slide. Yeah. Oh, there we go.
Whoa.
That's a good slide illustrating my point.
With the background.
Now, one of the reasons why we like technology is because it offers us greater control over nature and other people. Now, instead of waiting till tomorrow to bully someone, you can do it anytime you want, because technology follows them around, and so you exert more control over these people. Okay, now, next slide. Here's an ominous quote. Someone like to read this?
Homo sapiens is likely to upgrade itself step by step, merging with robots and computers in the process until our descendants look back and realize that they're no longer the kind of animal that wrote the Bible, built the Great Wall of China, and laughed at Charlie Chaplin's antics. This will happen not in a day or in a year, indeed it is already happening right now, through innumerable actions. Every day, millions of people decide to grant their smartphone a bit more control over their lives, or try a new and more effective antidepressant drug. In pursuit of health, happiness, and power, humans will gradually change first one of their features, and then another, and another, until they will no longer be human.
So this introduces a brief segment on transhumanism. Now, transhumanism is the idea that we can transcend the limitations of being human, aging, death, sickness, we can increase our intellect, strength, etc., etc., using technology. And transhumanism, if you want to read about it, this is a good book, Transhumanism and Its Critics. So their whole goal is to merge with technology in order to accomplish transcendence, pretty much, and achieve their goals. And I just wanted to lay out a few of their values so you can be prepared and think about this. So 7 transhumanist assumptions: human potential, humans can change into something better; technological progress; human autonomy is a big thing in transhumanism. They believe that every human has the right for self-direction into how they want to augment their own body and change themselves. And they want the technology and so they can have the ability to do that. They want to Another one is post-human transformation. They're naturalist, worldview, and they're very secular. So this is kind of an ideology, it's kind of like a fringe ideology that's propping up to where people, it's kind of like its own false gospel when you think about it, because people are seeking salvation in technology. And this is where people who want to, have virtual reality stuff, like fully immersive virtual reality, and upload your brain into the computer, like The Matrix. Good movie, by the way. I like the movie. If you want to learn more about that, they have their own website where they have a manifesto and a declaration. It's on humanityplus.org. And I'll kind of cut. If you want to talk more about transhumanism, we can talk about that later. But I just want to end with an analogy or an illustration. As I walk to the other side of the screen. As you can tell, my thoughts are very chaotic. So, in Dune, who's seen the movie? Did you notice how there's no robots? There's a reason why there's no robots in Dune. It's because before the movie, they had, I think it's called the Butalarian Jihad, where they went around, they killed all the robots, because they were like, this technology was enslaving them. The artificial intelligence was enslaving them. You have to click it, which works. Go to the next slide. Wow, look at that. Oh, what does the future hold?
War of the Worlds.
I hated that.
That's both AI generated, by the way. Okay, next slide.
Oh.
Oh my
This is an actual picture from the book. Yeah. And so you can see they're like killing the robots because they hate technology and artificial intelligence. And so I just want to like leave that idea with you that, you might have to go kill some artificial intelligence because they're trying to like kill us. All right.
Let's go.
With that, we'll go into a time for questions. Yeah.
So, we don't have enough time to circle up tonight because there are two of us, but I think we can still have some good discussion as we go. Seems like everyone's been talking. Let me see, which one do you all want to start with? What looks the most interesting?
Three.
How many for three? Okay. How much interaction should we, I'm going to put in parentheses, Christians, have with AI? So should we go full Luddite on it as Derrida would have us? Or some form of restraint, maybe?
To some extent, I think that AI it's unavoidable. It's in our society, it's the first thing that pops up when you type something in a search engine. However, I think that we need to be extremely cautious, and I think that to whatever extent we are able, we should avoid interacting with it. We should avoid using it as a substitute for our own intelligence, for our own connections with other people. We should avoid going to AI for advice that we can go to real people for. I think that, that's just initial thoughts.
I think, we've talked a lot about how, we are the first people experiencing this. And as with so many things, you don't know its effects until 20 plus years down the road, right? Or more. For us in this earlier generation, I think, to Naomi's point, moderation leaning towards like a more Luddite experience is healthier, if only because we don't know how this is going to affect us, right? So I'd say I'd rather be cautious now and be told that I was an idiot 30 years down the road and know that I was. Like, I'd rather be proven wrong about this 30 years down the road than engage in it in some way that damages me, my family, right? You know, any million things. So caution.
I think a danger is like, again, don't like the verse, don't give the devil a foothold. I think in the same way, there's a lot of harmless uses for AI, a lot of ways that it's completely harmless, but that's what makes it more of a threat, is that there's so many little harmless things that you can do with it. It's so appealing for members of the church to be like, okay, well let's just use it for this. Well, we won't do that. No. We're not gonna use it for all these things, but we can use it for this. It's okay. But then it's you get that taste of forbidden fruit, and I don't think we can trust humans to moderate something like AI. I think it's gonna, if we give AI that foothold in there, if we give something that's not man or God, that has the capability to teach and to honestly take over humanity, why are we giving this thing a foothold? I mean, it said, what was that quote, that it was AI has a 10% chance of ending humanity? It's like, why are we giving that thing a foothold? Something that has a 10% chance of destroying humanity, why would we even let that in? You don't really let it in.
I think that thought interacts very well with the Frankenstein analogy, that Frankenstein pursued knowledge, forbidden knowledge that was beyond that which humans were allowed to have. And that seems to be the same thing, like the quote says, doesn't it say that they keep pushing, yet they keep pushing forward. What was it? It was like it sounded like directly out of Frankenstein. They kept pushing forward with their desire to create this massive machine.
I guess, I mean, as a comm major, I think there's some uses of it that are quite helpful. Like for one, if like you take a photo and like it's really blurry, and you can use AI to make it bigger. Like in our yearbook, for example, like there's some photos that like were cropped really badly, and we had to use AI to fix it. Like not adding to people's fingers and stuff, but like extending the edge, you know. But like, I think the difference is like using any type of technology as a tool versus replacing yourself. So like when you're using AI instead of, like when you're saying, I don't want to do this, I'm just going to have AI do it for me, versus like using it as a tool that you control. I think there's a difference there.
I think that's why the distinction between functional and transcendent kinds of AI is helpful when thinking about how we should interact with it. Also, a random thought: who has extra fingers and digits in the Bible? And why is the tendency with AI to add that number of fingers? Anyways, Matthew?
I think 1 Corinthians is really helpful, especially like 8 through 10, kind of the Paul talking about food laws and knowledge about those things, and kind of that in relationship to idolatry. And as we talked about, like kind of demonic AI, I think that's when like 1 Corinthians 10 came to mind, as Paul's kind of talking about like if there's demons in these idols. And so he says, you know, in 19, what do I imply then, that food offered to idols is anything, or that an idol is anything? And he says, no, I imply that what pagans sacrifice, they offer to demons and not to God. And I do not want you to participate with demons. So I think there's like less of demons being an ontological being as much as, or like they're more of a being that exists in, I can't think of the word, but it's like as we interact, I think, with something like that. I think that's kind of what Paul's explaining, is how like the idolatry is demonic because I think the idol takes that, like the demons kind of assume that in false worship. And so I don't know, maybe with what he's saying at the beginning in 8 and 9, kind of talking about like the knowledge that we have to interact rightly with the world and to not, do things that cause our brother to stumble, to not do things that would, hurt the church and the body at large. I think that's where, like Kent was saying, to favor that moderation, to not bring in something that could cause harm, to not bring in something that could, lead others astray. But where I think, Jordan and others saying more of the positive side, like we can know that AI is not a demon in itself. And we can know in wisdom that, there is one God and there is one God with whom we serve. And so I think there can be a right relationship where we don't have to, burn and torch everything and murder all the robots and start over.
That would be fun though.
It would be exciting. Yeah. But I think we can use that God-given discernment to like relate rightly to the world, which I think is Paul's point.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I remember talking with Jiku, former president, about this because he's pretty savvy with AI and stuff like that. And we talked about some of these cases or whatever reported human interaction and things like that. And people would say, like, what do you think about that? And I would ask him what he thought about that. And he said, like, even if, these cases are completely legit and everything, he said there are people who've talked about instances where, demons are present and the light bulb starts flickering or whatever. Does that mean light bulbs, are inherently demonic or anything? Like, no. The spiritual realm appears to be capable with interacting with the physical, and could possibly, I don't know, invade things like this, I guess. But that doesn't mean that it's ontologically like bound to the program of AI. And I think that's just something to think about. It could be that spiritual forces invade AI as someone is using it improperly, like you talk about as a means of drawing someone further into sin. Just like if somebody was using any number of things in an improper manner, a demon may come to like oppress and continue to lead someone further and further into something.
I think we as humans crave comfort, and I think AI can give that. So I think it's important to draw a distinction, like you said, like Alexa versus like the chat house or like whatever it is. And I think we as a church and we as believers should stand firm on that distinction of like, yes, AI is a tool, but it can also go rogue. And there have been like multiple cases of just like going crazy and like it's insane. And I think it's fair to be concerned about that and to be reserved about it, because I think we should be when it comes to transcendence and like because it is how the world operates. We're meant to worship, and we will worship whatever's in front of us. And I think we see that happening, and I think we need to clarify those terms.
I just think that we absolutely need to be careful in, like Matt and Austin said, we need to be careful in identifying something as demonic. But just because it's not ontologically demonic doesn't mean that that makes it good. And so we were talking earlier about how this perverts the way that we were meant to bear the image of God, the way that we were meant to think, and that doesn't make it demonic, but that also makes it not good. And so I think that if you have to be very careful and don't over spiritualize it and be like, Satan's invading our homes, through AI. Possible, obviously, like that he can use that. But we also have to be careful in saying, well, it's just this really cool tool and I enjoy using it and it is fun. that's dangerous too. You know, you have to be very careful in how you use a tool that thinks for itself and thinks for you. And, you know, using it as a shortcut in a way that you shouldn't be using a shortcut, you know, that can quickly turn into being sinful because you're being lazy. And, you know, just there's so much nuance to think about in this issue. And I personally think that AI has more cons than it does pros. You know, I think that AI is, honestly, I despise AI. But yeah, I think that there's a lot more going on than just like, well, is it demons or is it, you know, just a tool? Is it perverting the way that we bear the image of God?
I guess so. I mean, just real quickly.
Yeah.
I think, like, yeah, a good verse to keep in mind is like that. Like, we don't trust in our chariots, we trust in our God. It's, and like, we definitely don't want to like rely on it so much that like we're trusting it to do what, like, to give us comfort and stuff.
I don't know if you guys already talked about this, but do you think there's a parallel between AI and like crystals? Like, cause like with crystals, like actual legit witches use them, and I'm pretty sure a lot of witches are really mad right now because people are popularizing it, and
I
like,
don't know, from what I've seen, I'm also interested in neo-paganism, and I'm gonna talk about that with Owen probably later this semester, but, I mean, witchcraft on TikTok is like exploding, and they're taking full, they love it, because their ideas, what they've been having to cocoon, like I talked about earlier, they can now just be open about, and because people are lacking transcendence, they'll turn to it. Sorry.
well, I was just thinking, like with AI, it's in my brain, it's kind of like crystals, because crystals in themselves are just crystals. Like people have crystal lamps, but and like people will like mess around with them because they think they know what they're doing, because they want to like people in my high school were like manifesting and like trying to get their crushes to like them, and it's like a soft form of witchcraft, but then there's like the hardcore witches who actually call themselves witches, who genuinely have interactions with the demonic realm. And so it seems like AI kind of is on the similar path. I do think there are genuinely people who use AI to do crazy stuff. And then there's some people who like mess around with it, and then there's like other people who just use it to organize their homework or something.
Make shopping lists.
Yeah.
That interacts very well with the kind of, to go back to the pagan, neo-pagan thing. Have y'all been to the Oriental Museum? Anyone been to the Oriental Museum?
ISAC.
Huh?
Institute for the Study of Ancient Culture.
Yeah, but at UIC, yeah, they changed because Oriental was a little bit insensitive. They have a falcon idol from ancient Egypt that had a speaking tube carved into it. Priests would sit kind of under it. But then, if you look at in the Greek and Roman temples, Hermes, I think, was he the god of some sort of medicinal god or something? They would make like models of what was broken or what needed fixing and bring it to his temple, and like actual healings would take place at these temples, obviously not coming from God. So in these two instances, you have an idol or something transcendent, shall we say, that is being manipulated by humans in a certain way to where it's perceived as a deity. And then on the other hand, you have things that are actually being used by demons to propagate false religion and the worship of false gods. So with AI, you can have either one of those things. And it's the same as with witches or psychics. Some of them are actually in contact with the demonic and doing things through the demonic, and some of them are just hucksters. And it will take greater and greater degrees of discernment on the part of the church to know which is which and to what limit we should interact with.
Which is which.
You're welcome, guys. All right, any closing comments or questions?
Anytime neo-paganism comes up, I always think of C.S. Lewis's quote from the Screwtape Letters, where he talks about Screwtape basically says that the goal of the demonic would be to get to a world where everybody would seek the transcendent and seek them, but deny outright any idea of a transcendent God. And you know, it's terrifying to think how well he predicted that, because that is exactly what is going on TikTok. That is exactly what crystals is. That is exactly what is starting to happen with some AI stuff, where you could ask any of these people and they'd say, no, there isn't a God who orders the world and all these things, but then they will go and use crystals or any of a million other things.
It's the materialist magician for the abolition of man.
Yep.
Personified.